Welcome, everyone. We have a good 60 or 70 people in person here, and then also very happy to be streaming this event live on YouTube. Welcome, everyone. My name is Greg Kaufman. I am the president of the Atlanta chapter of CAIA. CAIA is C-A-I-A and stands for Chartered Alternative Investment Analyst. And it's a nonprofit organization that provides thought leadership and education for the alternative investment industry. For those of you that aren't familiar with the alternative investment industry, it involves private equity, venture capital, private credit, and real estate. And alternative investments have actually gotten to become more mainstream over the last few decades, mostly across endowments, foundations, insurance companies, billionaire family offices. That has started changing in the last 5 or 10 years. My company, Gridline, is one of the companies that's using technology to make these assets more accessible to a wider swath of individuals and wealth managers. And I've always had an interest in quote-unquote alternative investments, and this is now the third event along those lines. The two previous ones were art, they were wine, they were gold, and I thought, why not do an alternative investment event geared toward things that are more current and of the moment: sneakers, sports cars, digital collectibles. So that's how this event came together, and I've had so much fun watching my friend and neighbor, Jeff Wilson, build two amazing businesses over the last 4 or 5 years focused on sports cards, and has this amazing venue. So Jeff, you want to come up? I do want to thank our other main sponsor, in addition to Jeff Wilson, which is the CFA Society of Atlanta. Robert Thompson, the outgoing president of that organization, was a big part of helping support this event. So thank you. And Jeff, please say a few words.
Awesome. Thank you, Greg. Thank you all for coming. We're super excited. Welcome to CARDSHQ. For those of you who have not been here before, this store opened up February 1st. So we are about 5 months in, and it has been absolutely going incredibly well so far. We've had great support from the Atlanta community, collectors of all types: sports cards, Pokemon, trading card games, frequent the store, get a huge age range of people in the store, lots of kids, lots of families, lots of adults, and lots of older collectors as well who have been doing it for 40 years. So it's fun being part of this. I started a YouTube channel called Sports Card Investor back in 2019 as a little side thing, and did not realize, had no clue at the time, that it was going to grow into being able to do something like this shop. But I'm honored to be able to do this, and honored to have all of you here today. And we've got some amazing speakers. So we're going to be talking, we've got a panel here, we're going to be talking for about 45 minutes. We're going to take some questions, and then we've got a fun box break that everyone's going to get a chance to participate in. We're going to be opening up about $2,000 worth of some really nice sports card boxes and giving cards away to everybody who gets. It will be kind of a random chance. So that'll be coming up here in about an hour. And hopefully everyone got a goodie bag. There's some free packs in there for everybody, and you could do some trades and everything. We're going to try to keep this engaging for the kids, but if they get a little bored during the speaking part, feel they can wander, you know, that kind of thing. And then I'm sure once we do the box break, we'll get everyone's attention again. So anyway, thank you.
Excellent. And I think this is the first CAIA Association and maybe CFA Society event on a Saturday and involving children. So it's just been so fun to put this event together. A really interesting thing that came together just literally yesterday afternoon is that Ape Water, which stems from the Bored Ape Yacht Club NFT brand, is doing an activation on the Beltline this afternoon, and they were able to swing by this morning and provide some good water, saving me a trip to the grocery store. And Andrew, why don't you come up? You know, they are a sponsor of the event, and say a few words about what you all are putting together, and then we'll bring the panelists on.
Cool. Thank you so much. Nice to meet everyone. This is quite a big gathering for 10:30 on a Saturday morning, so congratulations. This is really cool. I've never been in such a big card store either, so fantastic. So we are spring water in a can, and by show of hands, who knows what an NFT is? Oh, a good amount of people. So NFTs are digital collectibles, very much like the physical collectibles in the store. And we license different collectibles and put them on the can. So this can is numbered 768. When this can is out of circulation, it's gone forever. So we're making water collectible by creating more intentionality around water, and specifically spring water, because we shouldn't be drinking any. When you see water that says purified, that's actually tap water. It's toilet water that still has fluoride in it, still has forever chemicals in it. So please avoid all water that's purified water. That's purified marketing. And then also plastic. Plastic leaks into water even if the water is really good, which is why we did an aluminum can. It's also more fun to drink out of. So we want to create more intentionality behind good water and the receptacle the water's in. And we figured, hey, make it fun. So that's Ape Water. And yeah, enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming, Andrew, and for supplying all this water. I guess save your cans. Collectibles. All right, well, would love to welcome on the panel here and get things going. And a big thank you to all three of them who flew in from the New York City area to be at this event. All right, so just to kind of kick things off, could each of you give your backgrounds?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Colleen Cash, which I think is an apt name to be in this industry. I am the president of Sotheby's Motorsport, so I'm the car girl this morning. I come from the art world of all things, so I have had my hand in transactions supporting handbags, jewelry, furniture, rugs, silver, and now cars. Really excited to chat this morning.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Bruno. I'm one of the founders of Rally, or Rally Road, as some of you may know it. We are the pioneers of fractional investing in premium collectibles. So effectively, we take really high-value classic cars, cards, artwork, dinosaur fossils, culture, Birkin bags, watches, Pokemon cards, you name it. We get the best of the best. We turn them into little mini companies. We run IPOs of those companies, which fund the assets, and then they're collectively owned by a number of investors from major people to people who've invested $10 in them. So we allow democratization, if you will, of collecting and being able to access the best stuff that really inspires people and brings the communities together and gives them a new access lane to all of that. Everything we do is regulated. So we file annual reports with the SEC and prospectus with the SEC, and everything is run through our app where people are trading these assets daily, similar to what you'd see on a stock market. And so thrilled to be here and with this amazing panel, and thanks to the whole crew.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Howie Schwartz. I'm one of the founders of Always Legit. We are taking sneakers and educating the market that they are an investable asset class. And what's really interesting about collectibles in general is thinking about how we move this from a hobby across all the different lines into something that is actually treated as a proper investor would treat it. So we're facing one of the greatest wealth transfers in history, where we're going to see the next generation not interested in a typical 60-40 portfolio. They're fascinated by passion investments and identity investments, but it becomes very difficult to value, very difficult to store, and extremely difficult to authenticate these assets. So we're taking basically sneakers as the first asset class that we're focused on and making them available as an investment product and looking to scale towards Birkin bags, very high-end watches over time.
Excellent. Well, and all four of you up here have what I would qualify, and probably a lot of people in this room would qualify, as dream jobs. How did this happen? Jeff, I know your story. It's awesome. Why don't you kick it off?
Sure, yeah. I mean, for me, it was kind of accidental, but in a serendipitous way. I started the YouTube channel Sports Card Investor just as a side fun thing to do, honestly, back in 2019, because I was very passionate about sports cards and had gotten back into them just a little while previous to that. I was into them big as a kid. And at the same time, while it was just a side project, I also saw what I thought was an industry that was about to explode. And in fact, the very first video I ever did on the channel, July of 2019, we're in fact just a couple days away from the 5-year anniversary of that video. In that, the whole entire video said, sports cards are about to explode in popularity, and here's why. And that was the video. And I gave my thesis for why I thought sports cards were going to become really popular again. Trading cards were going to become really popular again. And I also said, I think this is an investable asset. I think people who buy cards now are going to probably do really well in the next couple of years. And then honestly, it was right place, right time. I mean, that's what happens. And I can't, I'd like to think I'm a genius, but I've had plenty of other, businesses along the way that haven't worked out that well, and my timing on them was bad. So sometimes it's, you're sometimes just a little lucky with your predictions. And that one really turned out to be great. So the YouTube channel took off in popularity. I created a couple of apps to start monetizing price guides, collection tracking, started selling the apps. Our apps have now turned into a multi-million-dollar business. Each of the apps is a multi-million-dollar business. And continue to grow our content team and our app development team. And then we opened up this shop in February. We now have over 50 people who work in sports cards and trading cards, who work as part of CARDSHQ and part of Sports Card Investor, doing our content, maintaining our app, and running this store. So it's super exciting, and the cool thing about it is I feel like this industry is really primed for a lot of additional growth, and I think the next 5 years are going to be super exciting, and I actually think cards are going to become even more mainstream over the next 5 years than they are today.
My story is I was sort of unrelenting in my desire to never be one thing. And I think, and I look to the kids in the room, what do you want to be when you grow up? Doctor, lawyer, firefighter. We look at these industries solely on their faces, especially when we're young. And you don't realize that there's a whole back end to them as well. And for me, it was a refusal to ever pigeonhole myself into one thing. So I have always been in the business of auction, the business of art. There are lawyers and accountants and all sorts of professionals who exist to facilitate these transactions, to facilitate these industries and these markets. So again, in my career, I've had the fortune of working at institutions like Christie's or at ArtNet, looking at data, looking at operations, building large-scale events around these transactions, and that's been such a joy because I have been a steward of so many different types of objects. In my current role as president of Sotheby's Motorsport, I was able to take what had become my sort of core and most universal skill set, which was online marketplace transactions, consigners, buyers, buy now, private sales. That is a language in and of itself. I had done it previously with art, and now I took that to the car world. So for me, I've had to sort of go through the cessation period of learning artists and their markets, and now putting that into cars and makes and models, and the differences between the Ferrari market and the Porsche market and all of that. But the truisms, and they are truisms, of transacting, of community management, of the economics behind communities in the collectible spaces, those are all very real and very transferable. So that's how I found my dream job. I was just unrelenting in wanting to be at the intersection of things, and now in my role, I do legal, I do financial planning and analysis, I do business development, client development, and most importantly, I get to see these assets. I really wanted to be in a world that was tangible, in a world where we could build programs and activations around what it was we were stewarding. And the car world certainly is that and more. And hey, I mean, what's more visceral than putting a key in an engine for, the older makes and models and hearing that engine roar? It really does get your blood pulsing. And I love the economics behind that rise in pulse. And that's actually an industry, if you can believe it, and it's damn cool to work in it.
Excellent. Thank you. Chris.
Well, there's a lot of children in here, so I want to say dream and job doesn't necessarily go together. Like that's it's a little bit of an oxymoron, I would say. Like those words, when you really dig into this stuff, yes, it's a dream job, it truly is, but it's still a job, and I think that we should face a little reality here as well, right? For me with Rally, my background's in venture capital, so financing innovation. That was an industry that started to also get democratized. And having watched that, I would say at certain times I wasn't overly impressed with what was being democratized for the rest of the people. You had a lot of adverse selection. A lot of the companies that would end up going to the ordinary investors were ones that weren't of the same caliber or quality as that the professionals were seeing first. At the same time that was happening, I've been an aspiring car collector my whole life. I probably will continue to be an aspiring one for my whole life. I think the people who actually get to do it are truly blessed to be able to do that. But for the rest of us, it's a community and it's a place that brings people together. The big difference between collecting cars and venture capital is, I'd say, access to information. Anybody, I don't care if you're 10 years old, 100 years old, right? The information's available to you if you care and if you have the emotion and passion for it. That's not necessarily true when you're talking about a startup company or a traditional investment. And so taking what was happening in traditional finance and making it more open and accessible and applying that to places where people who care can do a really good job and be the best investors was the dream for what Rally has become in many ways. And so, yeah, here we are a long time later after a bunch of work with the regulators and a bunch of work with building a brand and working with partners in each of the different categories to make sure we get great assets, that it is pretty much a dream. So, yeah, thank you. Oh, you got one.
So I've been fortunate where I've had 2 dream jobs. The first is when I was a kid, I was developing video games, and I always said that's what I wanted to do. And you know, my mom was like, well, you should probably go find a real job, and I actually was able to do that professionally for over a decade, so published well over 100 games. I did the licensing of the first US version of Grand Theft Auto, the top-down version in the late 90s. And then had an opportunity to move more towards advertising technology, which was, as you said, was a job, was not necessarily as much fun, but was able to kind of build that early on, sell to companies, and then really look more of the technology investment side of the world. So getting to the second dream job, which is now getting to fly around the world and talk to investors about sneakers and other interesting collectible assets, is really started with my son. So when he was 13 years old, he said, Dad, I want to resell sneakers. And I said, don't know what that means. I remember as a kid, of course, Jordan playing. I remember very specifically I couldn't afford the Jordans in 84, 85, so I was never able to access them then. So took him to an event when he was 13 years old, to a sneaker con, saw that there was something here. And from 13 to 15, he wound up really getting very, very focused and wound up doing several $1 million in sales by the time he was like 15, 16 years old. He opened up a pop-up store for sneakers, so some really, really interesting things. And right after the pandemic, I was going to raise a fund and realized that this was an opportunity and a lot more interesting. So, this is sort of my second dream job. And then what's pretty awesome is my son, who's 20 years old now, who's the CEO of Always Legit. You can think about him, living his dream job. He's in Milan right now looking at sneakers. He flew a few months ago to Seoul, to South Korea, to look at a $100,000 pair of dual sign Jordans, right? So lots of opportunities.
Excellent. Thank you, Howie. And when I was trying to get Howie to come down to this event, he was in Sydney, he was in LA. I mean, I couldn't even keep track of the different sneaker conventions that you were going to. And congrats to all 4 of you for having built serious businesses. Howie's got a fund. Chris has gone through the regulatory landscape, which is not fun in the investment industry. Colleen is at Sotheby's. Jeff is employing 50 people here in the United States. Like, kudos, kudos, kudos. This is an investment event. Let's talk about the investment merits of the collectibles that you are dealing with. And Chris, maybe you start with this because you have the broadest view of the collectible markets. Like, why should people be interested in investing in collectibles?
Yeah, so like you said, this is an investment event, but this isn't investment advice, right? The thing that's great about collectibles, at least for the CAIA here type of people, it's a diversifier, right? And these assets tend to run in a way that is uncorrelated with traditional markets, and in a portfolio, having a piece of that in something that's a bit different is typically a good thing. So I think that's kind of proven out over a pretty long period of time with the best of the data we have. And even within these subclasses, right? Cars move a bit different from art. Art moves a bit different from sports. Historical cards move a different from modern cards, right? Pokemon is its own market, right? So, having pieces of that in a smart way, operating at the highest end of each of those subcategories, and having that as a piece of what you're doing, it's fun, and it also theoretically is good for the portfolio. The other piece of this that I've seen in this equation is in times of sort of low interest rates, like we were in when Jeff was building this thing out and things were going crazy, right? That's you see that growth and you see that pretty pretty dynamically happening, where a lot more people come into these markets and kind of drive the new growth of prices, particularly for the best stuff. Then you kind of transition to the world we're in now, where there's higher interest rates and a little bit slower activity, and those same assets transition a bit more into like stores of value. But the really good stuff doesn't necessarily revert back to where it was. And so, you know, getting access to good stuff, buying things that are multi-generational, and if you want to talk about multi-generational, look at this room right now of how you're seeing a connection between those generations happening. It happens at, you know, car clubs, it happens at art events, it happens in sneaker shows, right? You see that exact same thing where those particular assets will inspire across generations. That's the stuff that I think really is good in the portfolio.
Love that. And we'll hit a little later on about like the generational interest in various asset classes and how that's playing out in the market today. But why don't each of you add whatever you want in terms of what's going on in your asset class and why it's interesting. Howie, you want to go first?
Sure. So in the sneaker market, there's a few different tiers. So one is sort of the store value, like you're mentioning at the highest end, and those have maintained value through different environments. On the macro side, those have also continued to appreciate. And then when we look at the middle market, where you see the most transactional volume, what's really interesting is that, you know, sneakers, you know, have a floor. And what I mean by that is it's a durable good. At the end of the day, you could wear it. So, you know, it's not something that typically goes to zero, which I think is important when we kind of look at something, one, that's uncorrelated, and two, start to understand what some of the risks are involved in it. So we treat sneakers as a quantitative actual index. So when we look at a sneaker, we're not looking at it's this brand or this model or it's this colorway. We're actually looking at the data behind it. What other collaborations may have happened with that artist, like a Travis Scott or something like that in the past? How have these performed? Looking at the seasonality of the business. So we've actually aggregated 5 years of pricing data globally, and we treat this as really more of a quantitative hedge fund more than you would think about looking at a sneaker and say like, oh, we think this is cool or this has some hype involved in it. So what's interesting is when you apply data to a collectible, in some ways it, you know, impacts maybe some of the excitement, some of the cultural value of it, but we're okay with that. We're basically trying to say that, you know, it's not a sneaker, it's actually something that we can invest in. So when we think about those opportunities, and same way that you'd think about it in stocks or other investments, you have a model and a goal. So when this sneaker reaches this price, we're going to sell it. We're not just holding things for forever, assuming that everything goes up to the right. And same thing on the way down, like every other you know, type of investment, you know, not everything is going to work as planned. So we look at it almost like, you know, like a stop loss. We say like, if this sneaker is going to draw down X in value, it's time to sell it and redeploy it and be diversified. So we're actually able to treat this actually as a data-driven investment.
Very interesting. And I read someone's report recently that he thought eventually collectibles could have their own quote-unquote CUSIP code so that they could be traded on more traditional markets, just like stocks and bonds. Which why don't we go to Jeff next, because I know that you also do a lot when it comes to the quantitative and analysis type stuff, and then kind of piggyback from there.
Yeah, the world of cards is interesting. Unlike some of these other collectibles, if you're there, you have an additional effect that comes into play, which is player performance, right? If you're buying cards of people currently playing, it's extremely volatile. There's different ways to approach the card market. If you're looking at it from a long-term investment, like a lot of the discussion has been about storing value and that type of thing, you generally don't want to be buying the cards of the players playing today. If you're taking a risk. If you do, you're taking a huge risk that those players are going to go on and become the greatest of all time. Now, there's some exceptions there. A very rare LeBron James or Steph Curry card. You're pretty safe with those types of players who are already, you know, have established their careers as one of the greatest of all time. Some would say Patrick Mahomes might be in that category in football, you know, and that type of thing as well. But for the most part, if you're looking for the long term, you're looking for rare vintage cards of the greatest players of all time from their sports, cards that are harder to obtain, cards that are ideally higher grade, or they have some type of significance to them that makes them a little more rare. Those are the ones that typically hold up best in the long term over 10, 20, 30 years. And the collectibles market, if you look, if you look at the 500 most iconic sports cards of all time and how they performed, they've crushed the stock market over the course of the last 15 years. If you compare the two side by side, I mean, multiples and multiples of what the S&P 500 has done. Now, I don't love comparisons between cards and stocks because those are two very different things, and stocks obviously can pay dividends and you're part of revenue generating companies, and so it's very different. Investing in any type of collectible is much higher risk, but there definitely can be returns from it. We've seen that in the past, and so the other interesting thing about cards, though, and a lot of the kids who are here, they're not necessarily into buying a Joe DiMaggio or a Mickey Mantle or a Babe Ruth or a Hannes Wagner. They're probably into buying a Josh Allen or a Victor Wembanyama or one of the new up-and-coming players, right? And so those cards are fun for kind of short-term speculation, right? Those are the cards that can fluctuate up and down over the course of a game, over the course of a week, over the course of a season. Those cards are going all across the map. It's definitely, it's definitely risky. That's using the word investment with that is it's a very speculative investment, right? It's kind of almost buying like penny stocks in a way, but it's fun and it's exciting and it's exhilarating. So it just kind of depends what you're in for it. And some people love the rush and the energy of that. Other people prefer the safer stuff, the older stuff, the guys who, have been honestly dead for 40 years. So they're not going to, commit a crime or blow an ACL and see their card prices drop by 50% overnight, which can happen, with the guys who are still alive and certainly the ones that are playing today.
Excellent. Jeff, we are going to hit on the risks next. You just hit on them. Anything else to add on that? And we can kind of skip you for the next question. Sure. But
well, I mean, with any type of collectible investing, it definitely is risky, right? I love it long term. I think if you're thinking long term, you're buying really rare, unique stuff, things that are going to be sought after 30, 50 years from now. I've been buying a lot of Dream Team era stuff. So I've been buying, the vast majority of my collection is like Jordan and, a lot of Dream Team era, Charles Barkley and Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. And so part of my thesis for that is if I'm holding some of these collectibles, whether it's cards or memorabilia for, the next 30 years, what are going to be the really hot things 30 years from now? Those guys, that Dream Team era, they're all in their 60s. And the NBA is going to celebrate its 100th year anniversary in about, 22, 23 years. When they celebrate their 100th year anniversary, those guys are going to be in their 80s. And I guarantee that the entire 100-year celebration in the NBA is going to be parading out guys like Jordan and Bird and Magic Johnson and Charles Barkley, and hopefully they're all still with us. Some of them may not be. Hopefully they're all still with us in their 80s, and they will be in the spotlight and celebrated as the heroes of modern basketball and everything like that. So I feel like those investments in rare cards and memorabilia of those guys projecting out 20-something years, I think that stuff's going to be really hot. I think soccer too. So those are a couple things I'm looking at.
It sounds like the seed of an idea for an investment fund to me. Colleen, why don't you hit on the sports car market and some of the benefits that are associated with that, and why don't you hit on the risks as well?
Totally. And I think actually to address the risks, we have to sort of address how to avoid them. And it's stuff like this, right? It's keeping these markets relevant and addressing what Howie mentioned, which is the wealth transfer. And I have seen it firsthand in my side of the traditional auction market, talking to consigners who bought English furniture in the 80s when that is what it meant to be wealthy, right? That was the height of chic design. Every apartment on Fifth Avenue was Ormolu mounted, this and that, and those things are worth pennies on the dollar now. And they were not meaningfully addressed within their own worlds, their families, and collecting tastes totally shifted. So I think the societal factor. And that's what I love about this industry. It's when the sort of the ephemeral becomes tangible. It's keeping it in the collective consciousness. It's bringing out the greats to the next generation, showing them the continuum and right in the provenance. These things are all related. And I think the car market does this particularly well. It's also unlikely that at any moment a brand is going to have a huge issue, right? Like a Ferrari or Porsche and the whole market's going to fall through. No, we're talking, individual cars might have issues, condition, mileage, et cetera. But I don't think at any point a model is going to just cease to be valuable. But of course, the truisms, again, of this space, condition, rarity, any story behind it, originality, I think these are true for all of our collecting markets. If you're making decisions, those are just some good tried and true places to start. I would also say I think our industry, collectibles, and the secondary market and the rise of the secondary market have created a very unique pass around the primary market, rigmarole, so to speak, right? If you want a Birkin bag, from the Hermes store on Madison Avenue, you need to spend a lot of money developing a relationship with a sales associate, and at some point, you might be given the honor to spend $12,000. And it might never happen. But the secondary market has allowed access to this lifestyle. And it's true in all categories. I'm about to sell a Ferrari go-kart right now, not street legal, but you are only offered the opportunity to buy this go-kart if you've bought, X, Y, and Z and other makes and models. The art world operates like this, same exact thing in the gallery world. Cars do it, retail fashion does it. So I think for us, and that is really what I've seen in the last 10 years. It's through community, through Reddit. I mean, look at the Reddit communities for all of these collectible categories, right? It's the sharing of knowledge that's helped to create these industries, and it's access. So I think what we have seen, and certainly in the car world, I operate in the very high end. $200,000 is our average transaction value on Sotheby's Motorsport. We do 24/7 online auctions, again, buy now, private sale. These are probably a buyer's third, fourth car in their collection. Some might use it as a daily driver, but otherwise it's typically getting access to something on their list. It's like scratching an itch. And that itch is going to be scratched a lot faster, and they're happy to pay a premium to get it now than, again, to go through the rigmarole of that primary market. So for us, we're all about exploiting that. We're all about expanding these markets. I think a frothy, deep ecosystem is good for everybody. I love competitors. I'm like, bring them on. It's good for us. If something trades over there, it helps us tomorrow with what we're trading. But I do think it's convening moments like this, bringing people together, educating, data. We can help these more traditional collecting categories continue if we keep it in our collective consciousness and if we educate and make it tangible. That's why I think all of the things that have rose in the last 4 or 5 years, from NFTs to institutions like we're sitting in today, are good for these collectible markets because they are breeding and fostering, the desire to engage with it for the next generation, and that benefits all of us.
Love that sentiment, Colleen, in terms of just all of you working together, even competitors, to grow the pie. More of that, please, in society generally. Howie and Chris, you want to kind of address risks? You don't have to, but you feel free.
I think what we're talking about here are the right ones, authenticity and everything. Those are the simple ones. One thing that kind of struck me that I didn't really realize before being in this industry, sometimes liquidity is the risk, is one that I would really think about. A lot of these markets are a lot thinner than you really think. You see these big numbers in the headlines, and auction XYZ for this crazy amount, and then you look under the hood and you realize there's legitimately 2 people in the world with the means to pay that much and the desire to own that thing. And then you say, okay, and that one number now is driving all this stuff behind it, the lookalikes that are XYZ% of that, and everybody's valuing off of this one thing, which was 2 people who wanted to buy one thing for a real lot of money. And so, as you get into this stuff and as you work your way up the chain in it, I think you sort of learn a bit more about that. And you have to be cognizant of it as you're going into any of these markets, is who owns the stuff, where is it, what's their intention with it, and how deep is the market for people who care and can afford to care. And so that is a risk that I think we're really always thinking about. And we work with a lot of partners who are, because we can't do every category ourselves really well, but we bring in people who understand that and know where the stuff is, and I think that's kind of an edge in the way for for when you're thinking about these things as investments, not just as fun.
So you mentioned a keyword, authenticity. So when we think about collectibles in general and sneakers, to be a little bit more specific, the biggest risk is fakes. There's tens of billions of dollars of fake bags, fake sneakers, across the board. There's fake wine. Someone told me there's fake Parmesan cheese and fake olive oil, which I wasn't aware of. So when you think about the importance of authentication, it's an arms race, because what happens is there's factories in Asia that are across the street from a legitimate factory, and literally they'll walk a pattern across the the marsh, or I don't know, wherever they're walking it. So the fakes are getting really good, and it becomes a challenge to keep on top of that. And then in sneakers, more specifically, and this can be different than some other asset classes. Like if you look at wine as an investment, if there was a vintage in whatever year, they can't recreate and they can't necessarily make more product. But that becomes some of the risk, whether it's cards or sneakers, again, to focus on where we're aligned, is we can't control in the secondary market what the primary manufacturer does. So what I mean by that is Nike at any point can decide to re-release, or in the industry we'll call that a restock, X number of pairs, and this is all based on supply and demand. So if there were 50,000 of these sneakers available and the market price is X, if Nike, and it's their right to do this at any time, is going to release another 100,000 pairs, or let's say they release 200,000 additional pairs into the market, you're obviously going to see a lot of price volatility related to that. So when we think about this from a quantitative standpoint, in our model, we actually have propensity to restock. So it's actually really interesting. So we look at the historical data and we say, Travis Scott, as a collaboration with Nike, in the past X number of releases, Nike does not restock more than X percentage of the pairs over 2 years. So that has a very low restock of one. But if we look at a GR, or a general release, and it's a Jordan 1 whatever, if that has a restock risk of 7, we're going to actually treat that really differently. And it's also important when you're thinking about this, instead of a collectible as an investment, to start to consider that on what your duration is, what your hold time. So in our model, that Travis Scott, I can hold for 6 months, a year, 2 years if it makes sense. This other general release, I may have to actually actively manage and trade that in 2 weeks, and 30 days, and 60 days, because there is a restock risk. The other really interesting point about sneakers versus trading cards, which I'm fascinated by, is that the trading card industry has a wonderful grading system. You have multiple institutions that do grading and provide some checks and balances. We don't have that in the sneaker market. So we will only deal with new, what's called, DSOGL, so dead stock, original, everything. And we actually can't participate in the used market, which could be much larger than the new market, because there's no grading standard. So as these markets start to mature, what we were chatting about before, as there's more institutional interest in it, you're going to see third-party authentication, you'll see third-party grading, and this is going to add more opportunity, not only here in the US, but this is all global. As Greg mentioned, I just got back from Sydney and Hawaii. I mean, it's kind of cool in some ways that there's sneaker events all over the world, but this is a global market for what we're talking about, and we need trust, we need authentication, and this market to turn into an investment from a collectible needs data, which is also really important.
Excellent additional points. It sounds like maybe another business opportunity, an idea for Jeff. I actually submitted a bunch of old garbage pail kids from 25, 30 years ago to his card grading service, and I'm eagerly waiting them back. So maybe you can get into sneakers next. But excellent, great overview of the benefits and some of the risks. Let's talk about some of the Grail assets in your respective asset classes, and then B, the more accessible ways for people to get into these respective asset classes. I was talking to one of my colleagues on the CAIA executive committee, and he's like, "Oh, this was so fun. I used to be into this 30 years ago." And I'm like, "Well, hopefully this event gets you back into it, right?" And I've enjoyed that with my own son when it's Pokemon Go, Pokemon cards, or Magic the Gathering, and that sort of thing. So it's been fun to revisit something that I loved when I was a kid and still like. Yeah, so Grail assets. Jeff, why don't you go?
Well, I think the most expensive sports card sale of all time is still from a couple of years ago, a 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle SGC 9.5, sold for $12.6 million. A couple of years ago, I got a holdback card at the National, which was kind of fun. I can't believe they trusted me, but I held it. And I've actually held cards more expensive than that, because there are some that are worth more than that. I've held a 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle graded a 10, a PSA 10. That one that sold for $12.6 million was graded to 9.5. The 10s are theoretically if they hit the open market today, there's estimates that they sell anywhere between $30 to $50 million. So I've held one of those as well. There's only 3 of those in the world. Hannes Wagner, his T206 card from 1909, there's been multiple sales of that card in the millions of dollars. One of those is kind of rumored for sale right now that might break the $12.6 million record on the mantle when that sale completes. And so, you know, when you look down the record sales, it's those guys. It's Mantle, it's Hannes Wagner, it's Michael Jordan, it's Babe Ruth, it's, you know, those types of greatest of all time, which tells you something in terms of, you know, what the market wants for those real Grail pieces.
Yeah, the car world's interesting in that it's such a mature market that the definition of Grail has certainly changed over time, right? I mean, a big old Duesenberg was everyone's collecting Grail, right? Pre-war cars. If you guys saw at Sotheby's in December of 2023, they sold a Ferrari you know this better than I do, GTO, that's right, $51.7 million. So, I mean, that's a new definition of a Grail. At Sotheby's Motorsport, we are now seeing sort of these 80s and 90s cars become the Grails for that next collecting class, right? These are, say, 40, 50-year-old people. They've made some money. They're now ready to buy the cars that were hanging as posters. Certainly, like your Countaches of the world, Lambo, again, all of the old poster cars from the 80s or 90s are Grail cars. But outside of that, with cars, you know, if it's virgin, amazing, no liquids, never driven, low miles, delivery miles, single owner, individual family owned. These are all of the Grail words you want when you're buying a car. The fewer hands that have touched it, the better. Fewer miles on it, the better. Original paint. You know, you want to check those Carfax, all of those things that you know when you're buying a car off of any lot. But when you're thinking sort of north of $100,000 for, say, collecting purposes, just the closer to original you can get, the better.
And Colleen, why don't you hit on the access point? I think it's fairly obvious for cards, sneakers, and fractional investing into assets. Like, how do you get the next generation into these kinds of cars?
Totally. And what an existential question, given that we are looking at a generation that might not touch a steering wheel. Right? I mean, that's highly unusual. Or we're now dealing with EVs. So one of the things we did at Sotheby's Motorsport is we embraced it. And actually, we were the first auction platform to sell a Cyber Beast, not the Cyber Truck. What's the difference? 834 horsepower versus 600, 0 to 60 in 2.6 seconds flat versus 3.4, and it has a 3-headed dog badge on the back, which is pretty darn cool, and half the reason it's called the Cyber Beast. But we embraced it, and that actually has now set a world auction record for the highest price ever fetched for a Tesla at auction, surpassing the record previously set for a Roadster. And look, we see Cybertrucks all over the road now, right? They are a high production vehicle, but at the end of the day, that Cyber Beast will be at Motor Miami or at Pebble Beach because it now has that provenance too. So we're working with this next generation, particularly with EVs, to embrace them, to give them secondary market records that helps them build their markets. But we also need to leverage everything else around these things. And that's what I was saying, like leveraging the societal impact. We will do features, editorial content with musicians and their cars. Sydney Sweeney grew up in like a mechanic's family. She has a Bronco, she has a collection. She's in her 20s and totally top of mind for this next generation. So it's showing them why it's relevant to them and then creating access points for them to transact.
Excellent. All right, and why don't you two hit on some Grails? Let's keep it to 1 or 2 minutes each because we've got 1 or 2 more things to cover, and then we'll open it up to general Q&A.
So in custody, we have some really interesting Grails. So one is a Travis Scott I've mentioned a few times. So a lot of what we're thinking about in sneakers as an asset class is either collaborations or what I'll mention in a minute about player exclusives. So for each sneaker that you're going to see with an artist, many times there's either a sample that was produced prior to the mass production of this. So the samples, and we maintain in custody a high number of samples, but also what's called friends and family. So what's really interesting is for each of these more general releases, Nike or their Jordan brand is going to make a very specific friends and family, and there may be 20 of them or 30 of them are available, and it's given to the artists and their friends and their managers, and those are really coveted. So in custody, we have Travis Scott Jordan 4 friends and family. Market value of that could be $35,000 to $45,000. But one of the interesting more curated sets that we have in custody is a complete set of the UNC player exclusives from Jordan, and any of the Jordan brand schools each year not only may they do some more general releases, but they're actually going to do player exclusives for the players, and those maintain a lot of value because they're very, very limited, but it's also hard to get that in original condition when it's unworn, as I mentioned, also with good boxes that can be properly valued and properly stored, and to get them all in the same size is a challenge, because what's really interesting is if there's only 3 players that year that are 11.5, they may only make 3 plus X number of those. So we've been curating sets of player exclusives in the same size, which we think is really, really interesting. One other quick point on that is our specialty is not in the signed or really the more sports memorabilia or collectible, because that's a different market, and that has a lot of value. And some of the key sales in that market through Sotheby's, there was just an auction that was I think $7 million for a set of game worn and signed sneakers. So that's actually another opportunity in another market.
Is anyone else's head spinning here? Sizes. Chris, let's.
And my son wears like $15,000 and $20,000 sneakers. I got dad sneakers. I got New Balance, but like my son will wear $15,000 and $20,000 sneakers, which is crazy to me.
Chris, talk about some of the grails at the macro level.
I'll make it quick. We have almost every one of the things that were brought up today trading on Rally at this moment. So we have a T206 Honus Wagner. We have a 52 Mantle. We've got game worn Jordan everythings. We've got, we set a world record in Lamborghini Countach a couple of months ago. Talk about watches, sneakers, game worn and not worn. So yeah, it's all on the platform. We tried to do our best to curate high quality stuff that has the right provenance and has been well priced. And so yeah, it's available there. Check it out.
All right, excellent. So we're going to do one more, like 1.5 questions, and it's around the concept of like the modern collectibles and the dynamic between the old style collectibles. I grew up with my dad going to flea markets and garage sales, and he was into coins and stamps and a certain specific thing from revolutionary America, right? Like, I'm not really into any of those things. And Colleen hit on this concept when it came to furniture. So the extreme is NFTs, digital collectibles. Like that's had it's been very popular, and it's waned a little bit. But let's have Andrew from Apewater come hit on digital collectibles, NFTs. Colleen, I know you have some experience there. And then I'd love to talk about like this concept of the old world collectibles and what happens with them versus the things that we've been talking about today.
Cool. Yeah. So let's maybe talk about some of the original collectibles, which is fine art. So when you think of a Picasso or a Van Gogh, there's something that's called a provenance. And a provenance, for anyone who doesn't know what that is a historical record of all the parties that have owned this piece of art. So you're not going to go buy a Andy Warhol if it doesn't have a provenance to determine that it's authentic. And it's really hard to have that same fail-safes with other forms of collectibles. So what we're going to see in the future is everything is going to be tokenized with a digital collectible asset to complement the physical asset. So just how your cards are graded, you're going to have a digital collectible to complement that with a QR code on the back, I'm imagining. And now everything, whether it's a watch, a car, everything is going to have a digital collectible attached to that, and you won't buy the physical asset unless it has a digital collectible that has authenticity. And then when you become the purchaser of that asset, you're now forever on that ledger digitally as one of the owners from the moment you transacted. So I see that as being the future in all at scale within the next 36 to 60 months, for sure.
Yeah, Yeah, I've actually seen that with cards on OpenSea. I don't know if Jeff, if you've paid attention to that, and I mean, maybe push back on this, or do you agree with it, or?
I definitely think there's going to be more convergence between the physical and the digital world down the road. What's interesting, if you look at the last few years, you saw a rise in physical collectibles at the beginning of the pandemic, and then all of a sudden, digital collectibles became by far the hottest area of the space for a while, like going into 2021, and for most of the year 2021, NFTs were absolutely crazy. NBA Top Shot, in the sports world and those types of things. They shot up. Unfortunately, they've all fallen, for the most part, very hard right now. I think what that stuff is lacking that the physical collectibles aren't is simply just the history, right? A lot of people got into it because they saw it as an opportunity to make a flip and make a quick dollar. And when the base of the people owning it are flippers who are looking for someone else to flip to, if they can't find a collector to sell to at the top, then the whole thing is going to come tumbling down, and that's what happened. Within the physical card world, physical cards have a 50-plus year history of being very valuable, so there's just much wider of a collector base. Will digital collectibles eventually get there where it's got the same width of collector base as physical collectibles? They very well could, but it's going to take a long time. I think it's going to take 30 years, of building before there's a wide enough collectible base to really sustain, the type of huge growth that we've seen. So physical collectibles simply have a head start, but I think digital does play a big role in the future, and I think the convergence of digital and physical is also interesting, as you were talking about.
Cool. Yeah, and just real quick, and there's other interesting dynamics at play here. I came to the store yesterday at 4 o'clock, and there's 25 people here, and I said, Jeff, there's good activity for a Friday afternoon in the summer, and he's like, that's nothing. Come today at 5 or 6 p.m. You won't be able to move. And in that second booth back there, there was a woman who someone can buy a box of cards from anywhere in the world, and she will open it for you and then send you all the cards or the Grail cards that come out of that box. So that's a cool merging of physical and digital, right? I mean, they're physical cards, but accessed in some kind of digital manner. Colleen, why don't you hit on this next?
Sure. So my experience is pretty deep in terms of bridging the digital, the physical, if you will. Again, I come from very traditional collecting categories, in-person auctions. I actually was a part of Christie's first ever online auction, which, to be clear, had a full hang and exhibition, at Rockefeller Center with a catalog, et cetera. So it really was a tough gap for them to bridge, but they did it eventually. I spent, the past 6 years exclusively in online auctions. I actually built a fully on-chain crypto Web3 native platform for the NFT space. Again, this is sort of my point today. It was so interesting for us when curating that sale to have to assess the depth of the community behind the assets as a reason to include them in the sale or not. So again, actual dollars associated with the depth of the supporters, the communities. And I think maybe the community there is another word for potential buyers, right? That's really how we were assessing it. But we did a series of sales. One dedicated sale we did was on the Rare Pepe community. And again, what a depth of collecting vigor, right? I mean, and we really felt, okay, that's one that actually will become part of the canon long term because it did reach that critical mass. So for me, that has been something that I think if we're looking at anything, it's sort of, as a potential investment, that all of a sudden became something you had to calculate. And I think what it did and why we saw the numbers and the markets swell in the pandemic was everyone was captive, right? We're at home, we're looking at our screens. For the first time, we were able to streamline these communities that otherwise existed at cocktail parties and back doors and trade associations and smaller collecting groups. It was all of a sudden a Gulf Stream that we all had a front seat to. But those are real things that we in this world assess constantly and we become a part of in terms of our client development and our business development. It's almost joining that trade. And I think that's really important.
Okay, excellent. Andrew, if you have 30 seconds to do something around the digital collectibles, and then let's have Chris hit on the concept of the dynamics between new current collectibles and the old collectibles, and then we're going to open it up to questions, okay? So any last comments on digital?
Yeah, I just think that digital is this really interesting convergence now that's happening. You mentioned that the 2021 bull run with NFTs, and there was a lot of manipulation in the marketplaces, but it showed that there's a lot of enthusiasm and it's going to grow, and I'm really excited to see the convergence more happen when we start seeing a Topps or a Flair give the digital collectible in addition to the physical, so now we have fixed supply. I think that's where you're going to see the convergence happen, and that will probably be the next renaissance where both are merging together.
Thank you for coming, Andrew. Thanks for the water. Chris, take us home, and then we're going to do a Q&A, so get those questions ready.
Yeah, I mean, on the digital thing, I'm psyched to be holding aboard a water, like straight up. It's awesome. Like, but I think that's the point. Like, don't count out anything, and the cycles are getting a lot quicker than 30 years. So there's a lot of people with a lot of resources who are inspired by, you know, CryptoPunks and Bored Apes and Pepes, the way I was inspired by, you know, Porsche and Lamborghini and Ferrari. So yeah, that's what I think on that front. Yeah, I guess the other question was more around what the
dynamics between the old world collectibles that Colleen hit on and like the new stuff. Like I'm not going to do anything with my dad's stamp collection or his coins or his Revolutionary War.
Somebody else might, right? But here's what I'd say is you know, there, and I think Howie touched on it really well, right? There's a difference between a hobby and an asset class. And I don't think it's like a black and white distinction where like something is hobby and something is investment. It's a continuum and it's a spectrum that like these things kind of make their way between. Some of the things I like to look at are how many transactions are happening over a given hurdle rate. So how many things have been sold for more than $1 million, more than $10 million, more than $50 million, more than $100 million? And when you start to see critical mass around that, then you start to see funny things happen, like people starting funds for cars. Art funds have been around for 10, 20 years now, right? But now car funds are a thing that's starting to happen. So what does that mean about the car market? Is that maybe we're seeing our first $200 or $300 million cars? Exactly. Right? And, you know, I think you start working your way down into the more nascent asset classes, hobbies, whatever you want to think about them. There's a progression. They happen over time. Some of them go in, some of them go out. As long as there's a strong enough base of liquidity, right, like everybody's been talking about, those things will continue to progress. It just depends how quickly. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Hey, Colleen, anything else to add? You were the one that introduced that concept earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. And I just think to the point of what do you do with dad's stamp collection or with, you know, everyone has something in their family now, right? I mean, whether it's coins or stamps or the oil painting of the dog holding the pheasant. I mean, again, collecting tastes have shifted, but there is a market for that as well. So don't count it out. The pendulum always swings. I'm a holder. You could say, you know, when does a collector become a hoarder? It's a fine line. But these things really do have long tails, so don't count anything out.
Awesome. Well, let's move to the Q&A portion. Mark Bell, not surprised that you popped up here.
So one of the joys of collectibles is being able to hold it, enjoy it, share it, show it to your friends. Obviously, Chris, with your innovation, with the advent of Masterworks and with the advent of fractionalization, is that a good thing or a bad thing for collectibles?
I think it's a great thing, personally. But, you know, you'd be surprised, I would say, how real it feels to show somebody that you own something, even fractionally, even when it's on your phone. We've tried to bridge this through live events. You know, we've had a few different little mini museums at different points in time. We show up at all of the major collector events in different ways and bring the stuff out there. It's honestly, in some ways, better to be able to see it around more people in a way that's collective and community driven than just to show, you know, your friends in your garage or in your house in certain ways. So, you know, I think it's give and take, but I think for the vast majority of people, I you know, personally would compromise the ability to have a little piece of it over the ability to never have it in my life and never be around it. So I think that's kind of been our, you know, position on it, and it's worked pretty well for the most of it.
Mike, Mark, can you pass we'll get you next.
As kids, did any of you guys do any TCG collectibles, or did you collect anything as a kid?
I absolutely had a Pokemon card collection, which my mother gave to the neighbors. I feel robbed. I was always a collector, so I used to collect these little shoes. I just created collections of everything. So yes, I've always liked stuff, and I think it's cool to have around.
So I was in the video game industry, as I mentioned, in the 90s. So when Magic the Gathering, I was working for a company called Acclaim, which is out of business because I'm old. So I had sets and sets and sets of Magic cards that I couldn't even imagine what they would be worth today if I held on to them. And then as a kid, I had Garbage Pail Kids, so I had, like Greg, I had a whole bunch of those. But yeah, it's amazing when things, you don't understand what the value could be. So being in the game industry at the time, I had access to tons of Pokemon cards and things like that, and tons of Magic the Gathering cards, and I would have never imagined that these would turn into these longer term, really assets. So yeah, you can hoard stuff and don't let your parents throw it away.
All right. Next question.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, fantastic panel. Adam Newton with Aon. Question, is it Colleen? The vehicle market, whether it's cars, boats, you talked about the value being enhanced or maximized if it's closer to original, but is there any value created from restoring or getting it to a better condition in that market?
Great question. Absolutely. But I think it's, for example, if you're someone who has a 1988 Defender 90 that you're going to restore, by all means, go for it. Go work with any of the great restoration shops out there. Bring it to glory, but don't necessarily expect to get what you paid for out of it. You will increase the value, right? If it was totally rusted and you do all the body work and you give it a new paint job, new upholstery, you will increase the value, but you might not get exactly what you put into it. Aftermarket changes. Yes, there's a company I'm doing some business with. They're called SoFlo Jeeps. They do these 6-wheel. I mean, they are monstrosities, and I can say that because they name them Hellfire and Warlord and Apocalypse. And sometimes all it takes is 1 or 2 buyers. To Chris's point, the markets can be thin on these things, but you would be surprised as to how eclectic the buying market can be. Because also, there comes a point in a collection, you have the entire span of 911 variants, and you have your Ferrari, and you have your Lambo, and your Aston, and this and that you want something really unusual to add to the mix, and you're willing to pay a big premium for it. So at the top, I think it's an eclectic mix, but I wouldn't necessarily say there's to expect tremendous depth in that buying market. Yeah, please.
The one thing I'd add to that is there is a new kind of class of car assets I like, which is the resto-modded assets, things like Singer, Roof. There's a bunch of companies now that are limited production variants of OEM that I think is a place where you're going to see a lot of growth and continued kind of more direct appreciation. That kind of does bridge the gap between true restored versus true original, and in between.
Do one more question, preferably from a child, and then we're going to go into the collectible showcase sneaker. Okay.
And the signature is fading away. How do you keep it safe?
If you have a Michael Jordan card and the signature is fading away, how do you keep it safe? That's a great question. So signatures, and this is true with all forms of collectibles, one thing that you have to be careful with is they are susceptible to age over time. And so storage, proper storage, if you have old valuable collectibles, is really important, whether it's cars or sneakers or cards, right? With cards in particular, they are prone to fading, and autographs in particular are prone to fading on cards. So the main thing that does that is light sources. Obviously, any type of UV light. So a lot of people want to display their cards. I've got a lot of my cards and my autographs displayed. So I use, like in my areas where I have them displayed, I only use LED lights because LEDs, as long as they're not close to the item, tend not to fade the item at all. Traditional lights, incandescent lights, do fade items. Windows, natural light fades them tremendously. So these are good questions. So I don't know that you can really restore an autograph. Maybe there's some ways to do it that I'm not familiar with, but I think more so just stop it from continuing to fade by keeping it out of light as much as possible.
Can I add one thing to that?
Yeah.
So in the gold rush, the people that really made the money were the people that sold the pickaxes. And I think in this collectible market, we're seeing a rise of auxiliary services needed to facilitate the furtherance of the market. So one thing is that in the conservation world, there are so many new techniques being developed to deal with modern materials. For example, the Smithsonian is really struggling with some of their plastics because these things are now aging. They're 50, 60 years old, and the plastics are degrading over time. So I think we will see new technologies and new skills be created to make sure things like that signature can be possibly restored over time. But these are techniques that are being developed live time because these materials are so new.
Excellent. Well, this is going to conclude the panel. I've got speaker gifts for all of you guys. Jeff for hosting, all three of you for flying in here. And then we have eight or nine more prizes. Or did anyone here bring a collectible to show to the audience that was mentioned in a couple of the posts? We'll have a collectibles showcase for anyone that brought stuff. Did anyone wear some cool sneakers that can come up here and show them off? Anyone? We got one or two back there. All right, so we're going to do speaker gifts. We're going to do collectibles showcase. Jeff, I don't know if you want to show some of your cards. And then we're going to do the raffle, and then we're going to do the participatory box break over here. So let's do the gifts real quick. And please open your gifts and show them to the audience. And these books were curated by Stephanie of Curated Coffee back there. She has an amazing setup.
Fashion. Collecting fashion. And to all the women out there, you can get in this world too.
Yes.
Don't be afraid.
Yeah, and Stephanie curated 12 or so books along the lines of collectibles. She has an awesome stall at the Piedmont Park Green Market, which is every Saturday, so I thank her for missing that to come participate here. This book is for Howie. I don't know if he has this sneaker book already, but we'll find out. All right, a big round of applause for Jeff for hosting us here.
And I'm trying to learn a little bit more about your world, so I got Classic Cars. That's a pretty great book, it looks like.
All right, and then Chris. From Soul to Soul Sneakers. Thank you very much, Stephanie, and thank you for the good coffee today. All right. Excellent. All right, who brought a collectible? I saw a hand. We want to come up here and tell us a little bit about your collectible or your sneaker. And you're going to get a book or a box of cards or sneakers.
Hey, Kelly, can you get mine?
And if you're just randomly in the store, please feel free to get a goodie bag. If there are any left, there's a few extra under the table for the raffle. All right, well, welcome. What's your name?
Josh.
Josh. All right, what did you bring, Josh?
This is
Say it loud. Is money from the Great Depression.
that's money from the Great Depression, and this is a sea planner from the early 1900s.
Wow. Very cool. Thank you for bringing those. There you go. Come get a prize. All right, we got a pair of Jordans that was donated by Howie, but they're small. But if you have a younger sibling, we have 2 different boxes of cards, and we have a book. Feel free to pick whatever you want of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else bring a collectible or have cool sneakers that they're even just wearing? No? All right, well, let's do the raffle then. Oh, wait, no, Jeff, let's do your cards.
I brought a couple cards. If anyone wants to see these afterwards, I'm happy to show them to you a little closer. I obviously collect a lot of cards, so I always have trouble picking my favorite ones, but I thought I'd bring a few to just kind of show off. I talked a little bit about Michael Jordan and Dream Team, so these are a couple of my favorite Michael Jordan autograph cards. This is one of the first Michael Jordan cards ever created. This is actually his 1984 Olympic team card, and that's autographed by him. And that second ticket there, actually, if you want to hold that up, the second one, that one. That is a ticket to the 1984 Olympic Games in Los Angeles. That was to the basketball That's the very first Olympic basketball game that Michael Jordan ever played. That is the best conditioned surviving unused ticket in the world. So that's the highest graded in existence, and it was not used. So somebody bought a ticket, didn't go, kept the ticket preserved for all these years, and it's the best conditioned available. And then I love this Michael Jordan autograph card as well, just because of the image. That's his 1988 All-Star card where he's doing an iconic slam dunk signed by him, and that's the highest graded copy of that card in the world that exists. So, you know, just some kind of early Jordan stuff. I'm also a big collector of LeBron James cards. This is LeBron James' first card ever, his first NBA card. This is from 2002, Topps Finest. This is his draft card. This is the gold refractor version of it, meaning it's numbered to 25, so only 25 of these in the world. And this is a high-grade version of it. So this is about a $100,000 card, one of my favorites. And I talked about some of the old stuff. I picked this up at the National last year. This is 1941 play ball, Joe DiMaggio. What makes this special is it's also signed by Joe DiMaggio. Only 8 of these were ever signed. And of course, Joe DiMaggio, that were authenticated by PSA. And of course, you know, with DiMaggio no longer being with us, you know, you're not going to see any more of these signed. So this is the type of collectible that I kind of feel like, with so few of these in existence, signed by the athlete over time, you know, I think there's going to be a lot of interest in that. And then I brought a one more ticket to share. This is when Hank Aaron, for our fans here in Atlanta, when Hank Aaron hit his 715th home run to break Babe Ruth's all-time record back in 1974. This is one of only 4 authenticated, unused tickets to that game. So that's the ticket to get into Fulton County Stadium that night when he broke the home run record, but the person didn't go to the game. So that's the full ticket. There's only 4 of those that are known to exist that have been authenticated, so that's one of the 4. And then the final one I brought, this tends to draw the most attention, even though it's not a sports card. Has anyone ever heard of Taylor Swift before? She's slightly popular. This is her business card from 2006, before she had a recording contract, when she was playing in bars in Nashville, Tennessee, as a teenager in high school, and she was handing out her business card to anyone in the music business who would come into the bar. She signed this, dated it of July 2006, signed it, and there's only 4 of these known to still exist in the world that have ever been authenticated. So that's a kind of a neat, you know, non-sports collectible, but these are the kind of things that I'm into.
How much is that one worth, do you think?
I bought this for $10,000 a year ago, so you know we'll see what it's worth over time.
After the Eras tour, I might add a 0.
Yeah, it was before the Eras tour. Oh, good.
You want to tell them what card you have?
I have a Brock Bowers 1/1 gold signed.
Nice. What is it?
1/1 Brock Bowers autographed.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing.
That's awesome. Future NFL star there.
I got the mic. There you go. All right, what card do you want to show off?
I got the first card that I've ever gotten at CARDSHQ. We opened 2023 Black, and it was a CJ Stroud futuristic patch out of 50. And we graded it here and got it graded, so that was fun.
Nice. Congratulations.
Thank you. Huh?
Good. You want to?
Yeah. Thank you.
And hopefully there'll be a Grail or 2 out of the goodie bags that you all pulled today. What was next? Just a quick question for Chris. So Jeff has all these Grail cards. Like, what's the dynamic if you bring a $100,000 card to a fractional investing platform? Is it still worth $100,000, or does it become worth $110,000?
No, we always start from fair market value when we bring things on the platform. The nice thing about us compared to some of the other places to get liquidity is that Jeff could keep equity in that. So he doesn't have to sell 100% of his card. Maybe he wants to sell 50% of it and put it into buying more Taylor Swift stuff. That's up to him.
Okay, thank you. And then Rob Thompson, the outgoing president of the CFA Society. Didn't really want to say any remarks, but he's going to pull the raffle ticket numbers here. All right, so 079. All right, come on over. Grab whatever book you want. All right, next. The books are right on this chair. Just feel free to.
There's a Lego
Oh yeah, there's a Lego book, and someone that we considered for this panel. 096. There was someone that was interested in participating, Grant Wainscott of the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce. He collects very valuable Lego sets, and that I don't know if they're. I mean, I didn't. Yeah, so that was neat. 096. No, okay. 096. Nope. All right. Keep going. 072. Okay, come on up. 072. Take any of the, if you win a prize, please come up here and take any of the books on this chair that are about collecting. Nope. Yes. All right. 055. All right, winner. All right. 084. All right, I'm loving this. A lot of kids. Different one than that. Sorry. 033. Yes. All right, come on up. Zero 067. 067. All right, come on. And there's comic books, there's an NFT book, there's sneaker books, just to give you guys some insight of the collection she put together. 080. All right. That, yeah. One more. All right, 027. All right, I love this, mostly kids. All right, but we're all gonna be winners here. A, because you have your goodie bags. B, we're about to move over to the box breaking segment of this. I don't know that YouTube is continuing from this point, but if you joined virtually, thank you so much. We would have loved to have you here in person for coffee, collectibles, all that, but we really appreciate you joining us. So Jeff, take us home here.
All right, so we're going to do a box break. So the way that this is going to work is Kennedy and Kelly are going to hand a slip of paper to everybody. So make sure you get a slip of paper. It's going to have around 4 players' names on it. So we're going to open 5 boxes of a brand new baseball product which just came out. It's called Tier 1 Baseball. These are small boxes. There's only 4 cards per box. So we're going to get a total of 20 cards. So not everybody's going to get a card, but it's a really nice product. Half the cards we pull out of these boxes, every box has 2 autograph cards and has 1 card with memorabilia in it. So if you get a card, chances are you're going to get something really, really nice. There's Mickey Mantle autographs in here. There's a lot of really historic autographs that you can get, as well as all the modern players like Ronald Acuna Jr., autographs, bat knobs, etc. So we'll see which cards we get, how lucky we are. But what we're going to do is we're going to open the 5 boxes, and I'm going to announce the name of the player on every card that we pull. If you get a slip of paper with that player's name on it, that card is yours. So you're going to make sure we're handing out the slips of paper now. Make sure you get a slip of paper. It is going to list your players' names. And then keep that by your side as we open up the boxes here in just a minute. So we're going to give Kennedy a moment to get everybody give everybody a slip here. And for those of you who have joined on YouTube, thank you so much for being part of this today. We really appreciate it. We also have our trade night tonight here at CARDSHQ. So for those of you on YouTube, we'll be back live on the Sports Card Investor channel from 5 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time today with Trade Night at CARDSHQ. And for those of you in the audience today, we'd love to have you back out later today. There's Trade Night. So we're going to have hundreds of people here trading cards starting at 4 p.m. Eastern here inside CARDSHQ. So thank you very much for tuning in, YouTube. And for those of you here in the store, we're going to move over here in just a minute to do the box break once everyone's been given a slot.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeff, for organizing.